from suchness. If it is separated from suchness, then the nirvana does not interact with us. The suchness does not interact with us. But in this tradition, precisely the suchness indeed has to interact with us. The suchness creates, interact with us. The suchness creates the, as the text says, the anashrava dharmas, the dharmas which are free from the inflow and outflow of impurities. It creates, we will see in the second chapter, it comes very soon. It is endowed with unthinkable activity, unthinkable karma. We have learned all this before. And it also creates the objects which are in harmony with suchness. This is a Pure Land. The Theravada does not mention the Pure Land. The Mahayana is a teaching of the Pure Land actively. We are all already actively living in the Pure Land, but we do not see it, because we don't see the Pure Land of our heart. So in the non-dualistic tradition, the suchness plays an active part. Suchness plays an active part in our experience. And again, the ignorance, and from ignorance come identification with illusionary thinking, and from identification with illusionary thinking comes identity with illusionary objects. So again, the ignorance is also playing an active part. Both the purity or suchness and ignorance plays the active part where? In one mind. And what is a one mind? Call it Buddha nature, call it the metrics of Tathagata. We have explained, we have in Buddhism, we have actually three theories of dependent origination which complement each other. We have dependent origination based on karma. We have dependent origination based on the mind dwelling in the world, which we are, the non-Buddhas, that is the alaya. When we transform this alaya into the wisdom of the great mirror, then all minds become one mind. The divisions of the mind, alaya, manas, vijnana, they are just like all the divisions. They are just skillful means. In reality, we have learned in the beginning, there is only one mind. The alaya, the manas, the vijnanas, all these divisions, they are to lead us only to the one mind. And the one mind, this is a base for all the phenomena. This is a base for all the phenomena. It creates all the phenomena actively. It creates all the phenomena by the services of alaya, by the mind which dwells in the world. And this mind which dwells in the world creates a continuity, and continuity creates the impression of something real being there. Something real being there which we can grasp, which we can hold, which we can take as something belonging to the self, of the self, in the self. And this is a source of confusion. So the confusion penetrate the suchness, and again the suchness penetrates the confusion. The ignorance is a confusion. What confusion? It is the active mind with which we identify. But the nature of mind is not creating karma, and on the base of karma, the duality, the seer and the seen, the nature of the consciousness, which is suchness, it is empty of any form, but yet it is connected to all forms. If it is not connected to all forms, then how can it be connected to us which have a form? So, for example, the great Nirvana Sutra, Mahayana Nirvana Sutra teaches that there are two kinds of nirvana. The nirvana of the disciples, which is without form, and the nirvana of the bodhisattvas, which is with form. The nirvana can create forms, and the forms, again, they can influence the nirvana, the suchness. So there is always two-way traffic. There is not the samsara, because the samsara exists only in relation to the nirvana, and nirvana can only exist in the relation to the samsara. There is always a two-way traffic. So that which is non-compounded must be related to that which is compounded, and that is our world. So this non-compounded, which is the essence of the mind of all sentient beings, which is a one mind, influences the our conditioning, and our conditioning again influences the suchness. So here we are. There is never one-way traffic. There is always two-way traffic. Otherwise, our existence does not give any meaning. It can give only meaning in two-way traffic. So, according to the Mahayana Sutras related to this tradition of Tathagata Garbha, I have mentioned there are three ways of interpreting dependent origination based on the karma. This is a traditional interpretation. The Nagarjuna has nothing against it. But the karma is, of course, not real. But then there is an interpretation based on the dependent origination, based on alaya, which is the impermanent consciousness. But this impermanent consciousness, its essence is a suchness. Then there is the another interpretation, the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha nature interpretation, where actually the suchness, same like the alaya, creates reality. So the sutras connected to the idea of the Tathagata Garbha, and most of the important sutras of Mahayana are connected to the tradition. The Huayan, Avatamsaka, the Vimalakirti, Nirdesha Sutra, Veimoting, the Lenyenting, the the Surangama Sutra, then the Lankavatara Sutra, they all link this Tathagata Garbha to Alaya and Alaya to Tathagata Garbha. So they are neither same nor different. And being neither same nor different is is the interaction. Everything is in interaction. And this interaction happens on the base of this one mind. There is no second. So this one mind creates, say the Mahayana Sutras, say they create the 5 or 6 states of existence. The gatis. We are moving in the 6 states of existence. These 6 states of existence are created by the one mind, and the one mind is our Buddha nature. And the Buddha nature is true because you cannot grasp it. If you grasp it, it is not there. If you grasp it, it is not there. The suchness, if you grasp, it is not there. But still, you need a finger to see the full moon in the language of the Zen. And this finger is the correct thinking. So we have learned, in order to understand the Tathagata Garbha, the one mind, which is the base for our experience, we have to use the wisdom from hearing, wisdom from contemplation, and wisdom from meditation. By wisdom from hearing and wisdom from contemplation, we understand that the thinking as such does not have any real substance. If the thinking had any real substance, then it would be separated from the true state of things. But the thinking is not separated from the true state of thing, but it is also not the same as a true state of things. So the thinking, which is based on the activity of the mind, based on the karmic mind, interact with a true mind, which does not need to move. And this interaction happens all the time. As long as ignorance is not turned into the wisdom of the one mind, which is in this tradition is a wisdom of the great mirror. When we have the wisdom of the great mirrors, and all the other consciousnesses also become assistants of the great mirror. The manas become the wisdom of sameness, the mental consciousness become the wisdom of beautiful observation, and the five consciousnesses become the wisdom of accomplishing whatever is to be accomplished. So they assist the true consciousness, which is like a mirror, which is like an empty space, and which you cannot grasp. All you can grasp are the forms in that mirror, in that consciousness, which cannot be separated from the the empty space and the mirror. And this is actually what we are experiencing all the time. So let us come to the text. Wait, where does it start? Here. So the text say, furthermore, there are four kinds of, this is difficult to translate, the four kinds of the professor Lusthaus, he has translated habitation. It is the meaning of shi, which in Sanskrit means vasana. Huh? On the base of this meaning of vasana, vasana means to dwell, huh? That which dwells in the mind. But this translation, I'm not so happy with it. It's okay. It's difficult to translate vasana, but vasana basically means, and we will learn it, it basically means the latent tendencies of the mind based on our habits, which dwell in our mind. Yes? So, as opposed to the Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha, the Bodhisattva Buddha, he becomes the Dharmakaya, which is absolutely free of thinking, absolutely free of the necessity of creating images, absolutely free from making images in the mind, making objects in the mind. So it does not need any attention to any objects. It just reflects the objects as they are. And that is a situation of a fully enlightened Buddha. Now, unless we become fully Dharmakaya, which is suchness, and the Buddha is the one who comes and goes into suchness, we always have these latent tendencies of the mind, which create the thinking, and the thinking creates what we experience. Because in Buddhism, in all traditions of the Buddhism, the world is a creation of the mind. This you will find in Theravada, in this, in all traditions. That is not any particular Mahayana idea. So the scripture says that all the dharmas are controlled, are contained in one dharma, and this dharma is called mind. Chitta. Chitena niyate loko, chitena parikasati chittasa ekadamasa, sabe dhamma vasam anvagu. The world is led by the chitta, and chitta in this tradition becomes alaya. The world is led by the alaya. It is controlled by the alaya, it is ruled by the alaya. All the dharmas are contained in one dharma, which is the chitta. So are under the rule of one dharma, which is a chitta. And this chitta here becomes alaya. We have learned from alaya arises manas, which is inseparable from alaya. We have seen these 5 kinds of manas we have learned before. So they are based in alaya, but they evolve into manas from alaya. And manas is continuity. And from continuity, we have learned before, we then differentiate the phenomena which are called vastu. Vastu means actually the base. They are the basis for our understanding of the world. Outer basis and inner basis. So we have the 12 bases, the 6 inner bases and the 6 outer bases, and they work based on the manas. And due to manas sees, according to the Yogacara, the Asangas tradition, sees the alaya as being the self. According to the Xianzang tradition, it sees this activating aspect of the alaya, this darshana bhaga or avarjana chitta, we have learned all this, sees it as the being the self. That which activates the mind, it sees it as being the self. But that which activates the mind is the karmic consciousness. And due to karmic consciousness, at the same time when karmic consciousness arises the darshana bhaga, the seer and the seen. And the darshana bhaga is avarjana chitta, is the mind which evolves. And when it evolves, how it evolves? It evolves in terms of kyati vijnana, which is the revealing consciousness. And from the revealing consciousness, we have seen there is the differentiation based on the sensation. We like and we dislike. And this sensation, consciousness, differentiating consciousness leads to the consciousness of continuity. And this consciousness of continuity is then considered to be the self. Whether real or unreal depends as we have learned, the level of our realization. But it becomes completely unreal when we come to the beginning of the movement of the mind, the beginning of the karmic consciousness, as we have learned. And that is the suchness. And that is the only reality. There is no other reality. And that suchness is the true nature of our mind, but as opposed to the Buddha, we don't see it. When we become the arahats, we think that this suchness dwells. We hold to it as something which is really there. But when we have the bodhisattva realization, we see that the suchness is actually everything, not something separate from the world. So the world interacts with the suchness, and the suchness um, interact with the world. Hmm? So there are four kinds of latent tendencies in the mind, four kinds of, you can translate as habitations in the mind, or as the forces that permeate the mind, that make it move, or as we will see on the comparison as the that which perfumes the mind. The mind has in itself has no any uh, any smell, but it is perfumed by these latent tendencies, by that which dwells in the mind, but which, strictly speaking, it makes the mind moves, but it's, strictly speaking, the nature of the mind is not moving. It's this moving is based on the that which actually in its essence does not move. It moves only in its characteristics, in its manifestations. This is difficult to understand. That's why the many very wise people have been breaking their minds on this treatise. Some vehemently opposing it because it is against the idea of the nirvana interacting with the samsara, which is more or less the orthodox, not the orthodox idea. The suchness does not, you realize the suchness by emptying the mind. And when you empty the mind, then you realize the suchness. But here, the suchness interacts with the forms. So, as the Lankavatara Sutra, which is the base of Zen, also says that the suchness or the Buddha nature is not different from alaya, and the alaya is not different from suchness. So they have the same function of creating our reality. The consciousness which has forms and the consciousness which does not have form, they have the same function of creating real reality, and they interact with each other. Therefore, we have four kinds of the vasanas. Let's leave it untranslated, because the habitation in reality, you cannot inhabit the true mind. So I'm not happy with this habitation. Why not latent energies? Latent energies which inhabit the mind. It is very long, but if you like habitation, it's all right. So there are four kinds of vasanas that exist between pure and defiled dharmas. So that these the habitations, sorry, and due to these four kinds of habitations, the pure and the defiled dharmas, they arise without interruption. This would be the proper translation. So there are 4 kinds of vasanas. And due to them, the pure and the impure dharmas, they keep on arising without interruption. Then he asks himself, author asks himself, what kind of 4 kinds of vasanas? What kind of 4 dharmas? The first one he answers is the pure dharma, non-defiled dharma, which is named suchness. The second, all these dharmas, they interact. This is very important to understand. They interact, and this happens in all stages of the path. In the beginning, their interaction is not clear, therefore the Buddha nature is completely hidden. But when they interact more, then the Buddha nature becomes more and more clear, until we actually realize it. And when we become the Buddha nature, so we are Buddhas. So we, so to say, return to the beginning of creation. Beginning of creation is the Buddha nature. But the Buddha nature is not something which is existing by itself. It exists again in relation to the world. So it can create unthinkable, as we have learned, unthinkable karma, and it can create the objects which are in harmony with suchness, which are in harmony with the one mind. So first we have the pure, absolutely pure dharma. Dharma means something which has some nature, which we can understand, which we can make an object of investigation. The second one is the cause of all the impure, of course, the impure dharmas, the cause of all the impurities would be the best translation, the cause of all the impurities, which is called the avidya, lack of science, lack of awareness, lack of understanding our own nature. Because of avidya, we do not understand our own nature. So, because we don't understand our own nature, we have the perversion of seeing the impermanent as permanent, seeing that which does not bring satisfaction, lasting satisfaction as being the happiness, and that which cannot be the self as the self, and that which is not pure we see as pure. So these are the content of the ignorance, and more or less it is the same. Only in the Theravada, these viparyasas, They are the three kinds of viparyasas, of views, of perceptions, and of differentiation. But here we have to understand that the all the differentiations, they actually come from that which is ungraspable, and that is the one mind. This is not easy to understand. That's why so many people have been breaking their mind on this secret. So you have the source of all the pure dharmas, you can say so, which is called the suchness. And you have the source of all the impure, which is called the ignorance. Now, since when you have ignorance, that means you don't understand your mind being the one mind, then what will happen? Then you will have illusionary thinking. Wang Xin. Wang means illusionary, not true. Jia. Wang Xin means Jia Xin, means the, uh, the illusionary, the false mind. And this false mind is called the karmic consciousness, karma vijnana. We have learned that this karma vijnana, as soon as there is ignorance, the mind becomes active and spontaneously arises. And when it arises, then it has the aspect of the seer and the aspect of the seen. This aspect of the seer is the evolving consciousness and the activating consciousness, and the aspect of the seen is the nimitta bhaga, is the consciousness which reveals the object. They come together, we have learned. But when we become the Buddhas, we come to the beginning and we completely remove the ignorance, and so our mind does not need to move. Our mind needs to move because we have not come to the beginning of the movement, to the creator of the movement, which is ignorance. Through ignorance, because we don't penetrate the ignorance, we don't penetrate that the movement of the mind is a karmic movement. And because we don't see the karmic movement, we identify with the activating consciousness and what it activates. So there is a force, a dharma, which is a result of the karmic consciousness, and it is called the the illusionary objects. That is to say, the objects of the six consciousnesses. These objects of the six consciousnesses, they are actually already the rather gross forms of, when we take them as something real being there, they are the gross form of the non-science or ignorance. The subtle form of ignorance is the activity of consciousness based on ignorance, and the most subtle form is the ignorance itself. So the ignorance creates the karmic consciousness, and the karmic consciousness relate the words of the six consciousnesses, which we uh, consider to be something which we can grasp. But the grasping is precisely the manifestation of ignorance. So we have to start from these six consciousnesses to understand that the grasping is not real. When we understand that the grasping is not real, we understand that the thinking is not real. When we understand that the thinking is not real, we understand that the uh, ignorance which create the karmic thinking, the activating thinking is not real. So we are in one mind. So you have the two-way traffic. When you don't see the ignorance creates the waves in the consciousness. These waves in the consciousness, if you don't understand that they are uh, not true, you should not grasp to them, then these small waves become the big waves. And when you identify with the big waves, then you grasp hmm, the objects of the six senses, and you create a new karma and a new suffering. So the uh, suchness is hidden. But if you understand that the objects that the six consciousnesses are connected to, they are not real in the sense that they uh, uh, not not are what they seem to be, something separate from the suchness. Then when you see it very clearly, then the waves become smaller. So you can finally see, when you become a realized bodhisattva, that this karmic consciousness continuity, the division which comes with the division of the seer and the seen, is also not real. So you can go back to the beginning, which is the arising of the karmic consciousness, arising of the active mind. So the mind does not need any attention, it just reflects reality as it is. So that's why the Buddha is called the one who comes in suchness and goes in suchness. So he does not hmm, is not deluded by views, is not deluded by uh, perception, is not deluded by uh, uh, differentiation. So he reflects reality perfectly as it is. Now we don't do that because we are deluded in taking our uh, deluded perception, views, and differentiation as corresponding to the reality as it is, to the suchness. So the phenomena that we realize are divided from the suchness. And so we cannot help being subjected to grasping. if we become enlightened, then as long as this enlightenment is not the full enlightenment, which is the realization, full realization of the Dharmakaya, then there will not be powerful grasping, but there will be still latent energies of these habits. Which are we? We are just results of our habits. Even when we become arahats, these habits still have not become the Dharmakaya, which is free from habit, free from thinking, free from images. Just it is as it is. So I hope it becomes slowly clear. This is very important part now. And let us see the explanation. So we had 4 types of dharmas which interact between each other. The first one is a pure, and the other one are defiled, starting with ignorance, which is a beginning of defilement. Due to ignorance, we identify with our thoughts, which are based on continuity in manas. And when we identify with our thoughts, then we identify with what the 6 senses experience as the world. And we, due to powerful desire and powerful views, we then create a new karma and new bondages, either good or bad. But still we are separated from the pure Dharma. When we are not separated from the pure Dharma, when we become the pure Dharma, and the meditation is called becoming, bhavana from the word bhu, which means become. When we become the pure Dharma, we become the Buddha. And the pure Dharma here is non-dual. It is a one mind. And this one mind creates the world. So now the next passage explains what has been said. It explains what is the meaning of the vasana, of these permeations, the latent energies of the mind, which cohabit with the real nature of the mind, which is suchness. So these vasanas, this xu xi is very good translation, and it means actually permeation, or latent habit permeation, which is much maybe the most appropriate translation in English also, just the permeation. So they are, the meaning of the permeation is just like uh, the dress, ifu, how did I translate? Just like the clothes in the world, they don't have by their true nature, they don't have any smell. So when we buy a new clothes from the factory, it does not have any smell unless these threads have been connected with the smell. But this they don't have any smell as such. But when they are permeated with a smell, we put some fragrance on them, or we put some bad smell on them. We uh, we put the what is called this, the fragrant rose water, or we fart in the pants. Then what will happen? That the clothes will have some good or bad smell. And this is called xiangqi. This is very difficult to translate into English. It means like the uh, the uh, penetration of the uh, smell. And similarly, also the uh, the pure dharma, which is suchness, it does not, in reality, in its own essence, it does not have any impurity whatsoever. But due to the perfumation of the uh, avidya, so the suchness in itself, in its own nature, it has no impurity. But when being permeated by all kinds of habits, good habits or bad habits, this is the comparison, then it will have this latent energy. The Chinese is a very good translation, the xi, or it will have the xiang qi. It will have some scent, good or bad scent. So the pure Dharma in itself has no impurity, but in connection with the ignorance, with our non-wisdom, non-awareness of the purity, then it will have some latent tendencies. But it is not its nature to have latent tendencies. So the Nagarjuna says that the dependent origination on the base of this is it is same same idea also in this creation by the Tathagata Garbha. It is not a real creation, so the dependent origination has he says na utpanam, na nirodham, na shashvatam, na uchedam, na 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 agamam, na nirgamam, na eka artam, na artam, yat pratitya samutpadam, deshayam asa sambuddha tam vande vandataram varam. I Nagarjuna says the eight negations as the introduction to his concept of dependent origination. I bow to the one who has explained the dependent origination as neither arising nor ceasing, neither nihilism nor eternalism, neither coming nor going, and neither uh, oneness nor monism nor pluralism. Hmm? Very wonderful. So it means what? It means that this our experience is never, even in the deepest depths of ignorance, is never isolated from this pure Dharma. Hmm? And the more thick is the effect of the ignorance on our mind, the more distant we are from this uh, pure Dharma. So, rising of the face in Mahayana, right? We cannot see the suchness, but we start practicing by developing the faith in the suchness. First, by the six consciousnesses, which are the most obvious. So that is our logic. Our logic is based on the six consciousnesses, right? Without them, we cannot have any logic. We cannot have any nyaya. So we have to use what we have. And based on this logic, that we understand that this continuity of the mind, which is our thinking, cannot have also the any self-existent nature. And so we come back to the cause of identifying with something we can grasp, and that is ignorance. So in this process, when we understand through the wisdom of hearing, through the wisdom of contemplation, that these objects that we experience are not, should not be the objects of grasping, because when we grasp them, we create a new bondage, the new karma. Then we come to the more subtle consciousness, the continuity of consciousness, which also then does not appear so real. And when we realize the bodhisattva realization, then we don't see anything but the suchness. And then the cultivation is the cultivation of suchness. When we become suchness, we are the Buddhas. So the pure Dharma is like the inflow of the purity into the mind, and the impure dharmas is the inflow of the impurities into the mind, and they always interact. They cannot not interact. If they don't interact, there is no dependent origination. And dependent origination is uh, based on that which creates reality. So this reality is true, but the dharmas that it creates become false when we grasp at them. So this is the advantage of this approach. So beings, we beings, we move, our mind move based on chitta, which is alaya. In this tradition, alaya is connected with manas. They cannot be separated. So when there is alaya, there will be manas. That means we will differentiate based on the Vedana. When we differentiate based on the Vedana, we have a continuity of the mind. When we have the continuity of the mind, then we believe that these objects, which are actually the evolution of the continuity of the mind, is something to be grasped, and we judge everything on the base of this grasping, which is base for our views. And because we have grasping, we also grasp to the views. And because we have the thirst and views, therefore we keep on producing the new karmas. And when our vijnana is interacting with the pure dharma of suchness, then we see that it is wrong. When we realize that it is wrong, then we don't hold, don't grasp, and when we don't grasp, we get rid of the uh, the rule of the concepts on our mind. This we have learned before. So these are the gross kinds of consciousnesses. Then the subtle kind of consciousnesses takes us back to the origin, which is pure. So what we are as beings is actually the chitta evolving into the manas, and manas evolving into the vijnana, and vijnana evolving into our world. But we don't see that the chitta is actually one mind. So, because we don't see it, so our alaya has two aspects, the aspect of enlightenment and aspect of non-enlightenment. These two aspects, they interact. So when the enlightenment can only exist in relation, it was explained before, to non-enlightenment. And non-enlightenment can only exist in relation to the enlightenment. So alaya can only exist in relation to Tathagata Garbha, and Tathagata Garbha exists only in relation to alaya. So our condition, our experience is always the experience of relation. But when we become the Buddhas, then this relation is like a dream. So we just reflect reality as it is. Okay, so let us see the text. So I hope we have understood that the pure and impure samsara give rise to all dharmas. When the influence of the suchness of the pure dharma is more powerful, has more shakti, has more power, then the uh, real nature of our mind starts arising in our consciousness. When the other side, the non-enlightened aspect of alaya, has predominance, then it is hidden. But they always interact, either in favor of seeing our nature or in favor of becoming more and more distant from what we really are. So in a way, it is possibly even influenced by the teachings of the Upanishads. The true nature of reality is neither same with the purity nor different from the purity, and it's ungraspable. So, what is our conditioning? Base for our conditioning? It is the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is the cause of all the phenomena. And the conditioning of all the phenomena, according to this philosophy, is the uh, ignorance. The ignorance creates illusionary thinking, and illusionary thinking creates illusionary objects. When they are illusionary objects, when we understand that they are illusionary, then we do not grasp for the outer object, so we don't create a new karma. So we understand that this continuity of the mind is not as it seems to be, connected with any self, real self, and so on. And that this real, what we can call as a real self, the Buddha nature, is not can create continuity, but its essence is not continuity. So we understand eventually that this continuity, which is based on thought, is also not something to be object of grasping, and then we realize the complete illusionary nature of the ignorance, and we become the Buddhas. And this we can realize either by the taking the gradual way, from the logic to the logic of the dialectics of suchness, to the contemplation on the suchness, and or we can use the method of like Zen, of the sudden realization. We start with that the only true thing is suchness, and all thinking is uh, just complete illusion. So you just stay in the present, and the seeing is just seeing, hearing is just hearing, smelling is just smelling, thinking is just thinking. And what you just do according to the circumstances. When you uh, when you sweep the floor, you just sweep the floor. When you drink the tea, you just drink the tea. When you so without creating anything, you just do things. And this is a practice. From the very beginning, you don't separate yourself from your true self. Or you, at the same time, you also understand that in order to realize the true self, you have to get rid of this step by step of these latent tendencies, which still remain in the mind. And you realize them step by step by, as we have learned, reducing the useless thinking, reducing the influence of the negative thinking, stopping negative thinking, then stopping the grasping for the object, which is actually grasping for the concepts. And then finally, also stopping grasping at the thinking, which is a base of continuity. And then we can come to the beginning of the moving mind, which is the stopping the latent tendencies of the mind. So the as long as these latent tendencies of the mind are there, then still the suchness is the cause and the ignorance is the conditions. And they exist in mutual relation. You cannot have cause without conditions. You cannot have conditions without the cause. So that makes sense. So let us come to the next passage. We won't be able to do much today, but these are very important base for our understanding. So we have devoted more time to that. Then the author gives himself a question, namely, how does the avidya, he does not say avidya, but it is clear from the preceding, how does the how do the vasanas, but here it means the vasanas of the avidya in the form of illusionary thinking and illusionary objects to which we grasp. So how does avidya give rise non-stop to all impure dharmas? So nirvana in this understanding is itself is not cause. Same like the say the materiality is also not a cause, but it becomes a cause due to the conditioning. This conditioning is uh, the ignorance. And with conditioning, with the causes, the uh, pure and impure dharmas come to existence because uh, the suchness itself is not the cause. But when in relation with ignorance, it becomes a cause. So suchness is a cause and ignorance is the condition for all that we experience. Then when we remove the ignorance, we can come back to the beginning. But we can only do it step by step by getting rid of our views and the thirst. When we get rid of our views and the thirst, then we don't cling to the concepts, and we don't. When we don't cling to the concepts, we don't cling to we don't grasp. When we don't cling to the concepts and we don't grasp, we can understand this continuity is also created by the karmic consciousness. And when we go back to the source, the karmic consciousness, which is created by ignorance, we become the Buddhas. Now we are not the Buddhas, so our latent tendencies, good latent tendencies or bad latent tendencies, is our samsara. So, in other words, you have the two kinds of the vasanas or permeation of the mind by latent energies of habits, either the primary, which is the karmic consciousness, or the secondary, which is what we have explained, the illusionary thinking based on the idea of there being the real seer and the seen, and then the six consciousnesses, which are actually the continuity, development of our continuity of mind based on the differentiation of the seer and the seen, which causes the differentiation in the sensations, and the differentiation in sensations causes the continuity of the mind. So we have primary non-knowing and the secondary non-knowing. The primary non-knowing is the karmic consciousness. But the karmic consciousness, we have learned, never comes alone. It always comes together with the avarjana, the consciousness which evolves towards the object, which starts the mental process. How does a mental process start? You make the objects in the mind. That is attention. The Buddha does not need any attention. He just reflects things as they are. We need attention. And that is avarjana citta. That is and the mental process starts with attention. And attention means literally manasikara, making object in the mind. When you make the object in the mind, then the Khyati Vijnana, the revealing consciousness, will reveal something there. Then when there is something there revealed, then you will receive it. Reception of the object is Vedana, is the sensation. And when you have the sensation, you differentiate, I like it, I don't like it, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant. When you differentiate, you have a continuity, right? And when you have a continuity, you have the individual consciousness, manas, or organ of thinking. And based on this manas, we then differentiate the six objects. The mental object of mental consciousness, and based on mental consciousness, the objects of the five senses. And this is how we work. So this is what he now is going to explain, how the non knowing or avidya, non-knowing what? Here the non-knowing has a concrete meaning. the non-knowing of suchness. The non-knowing of suchness produce the impure karmas non-stop. The non-knowing of suchness is ignorance. The ignorance produce the karmic consciousness. The karmic consciousness come to never alone. It always come with the making object in the mind and revealing consciousness, which reveals what the active consciousness has been experiencing. And on the base of that, we then have reception of the object, which is Vedana. On the base of Vedana, we differentiate. When we differentiate, we have continuity. When we have continuity, we then discriminate in terms of our thinking. So we have the discriminative thinking. The six consciousnesses, they are kind of a discriminating thinking. So this is how the primary not knowing of the our true nature creates the secondary ignorance, which is clinging to our thought and what our thought based on continuity of the differentiating consciousness, what they manifest. Okay? So let us finish here because it is. So first he will explain how the ignorance produces non-stop all the defiled dharmas, and then he will experience how he will explain how the opposite, which is not opposite, which is only exists in relation, how the pure dharma, the suchness, produces all the pure dharmas. And this is what we are. The mixture of the two, the alaya, in which the enlightened aspect lives together with the non-enlightened aspect and influence each other mutually. So let us finish here because our time is over and dinner is waiting for us. So we will continue as usual. I hope next Saturday is what date? 12. So 12, I will be teaching in this Sakya monastery. So I hope I will get there on the 10th. So I hope there will be internet. Should be. And if there is internet, so those people who am I supposed to teach? They are the monks and so on, so they can also take part if they interested. Okay, because this scripture does not exist in Tibetan; it exists only in Chinese, and it is very, very important. In Tibetan, there is a related scripture which exists also in Chinese, but not so popular, and that is the Uttaratantra Shastra by Sagaramati. And the Tibetans, they study this. And it is also kind of dependent origination based on the Tathagata Dharma, the Buddha nature. Okay, so let us finish here for today. Tomorrow, that means not tomorrow, next week on Saturday, we can, if you have any questions, we will start with the questions. This is a very important topic. which has been the very hard, they say in English, hard nut to crack, even for very great minds, not to speak about themselves. Some very opposed in China to this idea of interaction of that which is not created with that which is created. And some like Taishi Tashi, one of the most important modern teachers of Buddhism in China, they believe that this is the personal experience of the Ashwagosha, who has attained a very, very high stage of realization, namely the non-moving mind, which is the eighth stage of Bodhisattva realization, in which you don't actually don't let the mind be created by the objects, but you create the objects in the mind. If you get this realization, you are sure to attain the Buddhahood pretty soon. Okay. So, 愿你自贡的不计一劫，我等一众生皆恐成佛道。May the merits of today's Dharma spread to all beings so that we attain the state of innate, in this case, perfection. Om Mito. So see you next week, unless there is something happens for some reason or other. But I don't think anything will happen. So see you next Saturday, 6 o'clock. Okay. Have a
Thank you,
nice
Pastor.
weekend.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pastor.
It's a pleasure. Have a nice
How can we
weekend.
follow your teachings?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
There is a mailing list or something that we can follow you.
List, you mean? What list?
A mail, an email, or how? Because I just saw in the WhatsApp group, but I would like to follow next week.
Well, there is you will get from the organizers. You will get you give your email, and you will get the notice. Like, how did you appear today? You must have pressed. So
Good
it is
karma.
the same. It is the same. It is the same thing. Always the same. What it is called? The number.
Link.
Link.
Link. It is the same link. Nothing changes. Only the date changes, but the link does not change. No. So
Okay.
you just press that link, and you are there. Hello.
Thank you so much.
Good
Thank you so
evening.
much.
Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, Bhante.